Rick Serritella on location at the College Football Hall of Fame, brought to you by the National Football Foundation. I am joined here with the newly inducted Hall of Famer, Mike Utley. And Mike, first off, congratulations on the honor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, sir. Absolutely appreciate it.
Now, I can't help to think that when I watched the game of football today, and especially on kickoffs and special teams, we see so many of these violent collisions, right? And I can't help but to always go back to when you were carted off the field and you gave us the thumbs up. And we see that it's kind of the uniform message now players do when we see that situation. And every time I see it, I cringe, and every time I see it, I think of that day. And here you are today being honored with a prestigious award, but watching the game today, it sounds like you have no regrets listening to you speak. And I think a lot of people want to get your perspective, especially when there's so much criticism of the game of football out there today.
You know what? I appreciate you bring that up, and the reason why I like this kind of questioning is that I would do it all over again. I love the game. My parents made sure I understood that the game of football, or any sport, is a privilege. It was your responsibility to go out there and volunteer at the convent or the rectory or your next door neighbors to help them out. And that's what my parents did. So every time I had the opportunity to cross that white line, I gave 100%. My first year in the NFL, when I shattered my right leg, I was carried off. I tried to get up and walk off the field because the man walks on and he walks off. That's the responsibility of the athlete. You don't lay down and jump up and jog off. You get up and you get off immediately. But I couldn't. And so I was carried off, and my good man, I promised myself that I would never be carried off again. In 1991, November 17th, when I was carried off the field, I broke a promise to myself. And that bothers me more, that promise breaking, than the actual injury itself. Why? I want to honor the game by doing my responsibility. And that moment, I failed. And so in retrospect, I'm going to make sure I do everything I can to honor that game of football that I cherish so much.
But you say you failed. Did you personally fail, or was it more of a physical thing that nobody would have overcame? I think you're being very hard on yourself, Mike.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's the way I look at it. And it drives me when I'm in the weight room or I doing a physical therapy or competing with the wife, and it's the respect I want to give back from what my parents taught me to be a role model, to be a man and be a head of the household. And that's not pushing somebody out and not making a decision. Somebody has to lead, and it's going to be me.
All right, College Football Hall of Famer Mike Utley here, really spreading a good message. And let's talk about your career. Let's look back at your collegiate career a little bit. You're here with all this greatness around you. I mean, what comes to mind on the gridiron when you look back and reflect on it?
I tell you what, there's some of them fellas up there still pretty swollen, so these fellas could play. You know what it is? It's getting back there, sitting down there, and with the dinner with the coaches last night and see some of the fellas. It's being able to do a little jabbing, rubbing some rock salt and some issues. You have, these are watching these guys and being a national champion and these kind of things, and God, that's phenomenal. And again, I'm humbled by the ability to be here and working with seeing these men up there, and it just, especially the coaches, wow. And they gave of themselves. Yes, they're the head coaches, but they led. Yes, sometimes the hardest thing is for a coach, I guess, is called herding cats. And I was one of them cats, and I just absolutely loved it.
And, I heard you talking in the previous interview. You're still welcome back always to the Lions organization. I know you get out to some games, but you're watching games at all levels now, I hear you say, from the Pee Wee all the way up to the NFL.
Absolutely. It's watching what the Youth Foundation does with the Pee Wee sports, and remember, the NFL is involved with that because that's their future. And you look what's going on in society. It's the children is this country's future. By teaching them in my opinion, play the greatest game ever, football, but it teaches them to be accountable for their actions on and off the field. And it's just an opportunity to pay it forward and watch these kids grow because, like I said, America is the greatest place in the world, and football is a part of America.
And we saw all those great leaders go back to their high school days and youth football days and their coaches installing leadership. And since we are talking youth football and we have dabbled in violence in football, there's a lot of talk now that maybe contact football shouldn't really begin until middle school or even high school. How do you think that would work with the youth football development moving forward? Is that a recommendation you would encourage or not encourage?
The answer is let the kids play. I started when I was 7 years old, and let the kids play this great game. But again, when that happens, by God, take the caffeine away, give them the best equipment, make them accountable, and by God, make them volunteer outside of this great game of football.
Well, Mike, I think they're quieting us down to wrap up the interviews. I could talk here all day with you. We appreciate your time. Thank you, sir. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.